The Kansas City Chiefs send the Raiders out on a rail, limping, hurting, and quite frankly, owning that decision pre-game. What this means for them, who played well, who didn't, and the Chiefs are now the third seed in this playoffs. We're going to get into that, the implications down the road, coming up now on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. Matt Derrick is here to give us the straight stuff, straight out of the pressers at the stadium. Check it all out on ChiefsDigest.com where you can find his work. How are you, Matt?
I am doing pretty well, Ryan. Pretty emotional game. Not much controversy to cover today, was there?
Almost none. I was really hoping the Chiefs would put up 50, honestly, but
so close. Matt, for the folks who didn't see it, and I didn't even get the gist of it till about halfway through the ball game, would you kind of lay out what happened pregame?
Yeah, it was just a, kind of standard at first team meeting. I mean, the players get on the field for warmups during the game. And then when they're done, with warmups, they usually gather, the Chiefs kind of gather out around the maybe 10-yard line or so, sometimes around the end zone, but they just kind of gather in a circle. Patrick Mahomes or Tyrann Mathieu, somebody like that, will give a little emotional message. Then they break and they head back to the locker room. In this case, the Raiders kind of did theirs about the 25-yard line. And then one of their guys was like, no, let's go down to midfield. And they went down to the logo and had their little team meeting on the Arrowhead logo and did a little dance. And that was all she wrote. I don't think that the Raiders were trying to draw. I don't think they meant to draw as much attention to it as they did. I'm wondering. I haven't heard from the Raiders locker room yet, so I don't know if it was really more of a spur of the moment thing or there was anything planned to it. But it did not take long for that word to get around Arrowhead, even though fans were still filling in at that point. Players, coaches, they all eventually found out about it.
And is that what you think took over the emotional demand for this game?
I honestly think it was probably a little bit secondary. One, I think that this team was already fired up from last year. I don't think there's any doubt that talking about the bus ride around Arrowhead was part of the motivation for this week and about making sure it had nothing to do with the previous game in Vegas. This was about defending the home field and giving the Raiders a little bit of payback for celebrating on this field last year with that bus drive around the stadium. And I also think that, don't underestimate the emotional lift that this team had as far as wanting to win this for La'Jarius Sneed. That was, I think, a big motivating effort, especially for this defense. They really wanted to win this game for him. The Raiders and what they did pregame, I think, like I said, I think it was probably third on the list of emotional factors for this team. Certainly, and if you take the guys that we talked to after the game at their words, some guys didn't even know about it until after the game. So it wasn't like a universal throughout the locker room, rallying cry. They weren't talking about it, in team meetings or anything like that at halftime. But for the guys who did know, it was just, I think, icing on the cake.
I think the big thing for me is you look at this, and I was a little concerned, not necessarily that they were going to be missing Sneed. I do think he's a fantastic player, and I think he's a big part of this defense. But going against this Raiders unit without him was not something that concerned me a lot. But my major concern was just a letdown of emotion because of the emotion the team would go through. But obviously that wasn't the case. They took it as a rallying cry, and it worked in their advantage. And then you look at what the Raiders did, and you see that, and it gets talked about right before the game kicks off. And then the game kicks off, and first play from scrimmage that the Raiders have, they fumble the ball again, so it gets touchdown. And pretty much game at that point. I mean, Kansas City ended up winning the game basically off that one play. I mean, they allowed the Raiders to get 9 points, but that game was never close.
I mean, considering just how much success that the Chiefs have had on opening drives, and then they back up the touchdown off the Raiders' opening drive with a 3-and-out of their own.
Yep.
And that could very well have been just, a hand of momentum right back to the Raiders. But the Raiders never sustained anything in this game. I mean, anytime that they did sustain a little bit of momentum, they did exactly what the Chiefs have been doing most of the season. They shot themselves in the foot. Whether it was putting the ball on the ground, whether it was juggling a pass that turns into an interception, whether it was penalties, this Raiders team did exactly what the Chiefs were doing earlier in this season when they were dropping ball games inexplicably. And this is what happens when you make those kinds of mistakes against a good team. I mean, the Chiefs absolutely capitalized on those errors. This wasn't a case where the Raiders could get away with 1 or 2 mistakes. Chiefs jumped on almost every single one of them, and that's how you end up with a game like this.
What was it? 5 turnovers? Sorry, Ryan. I just wanted to throw that out there.
+5 in the turnovers. I think that's the 23rd time in Chiefs history that they've been +5 in turnovers, and they actually lost one of those games. So I want you to go back to, I think it was 1976. Go back and try and figure out how you lose a game when you're +5 in turnovers.
I don't want to know. That's not something worth knowing at this point. But I do want to point out, too, that it's not just that the Raiders made enough problems to lose, because, like you said, that many turnovers, they were created by this defense. And I thought it was very telling. And we'll talk about what La'Jarius Sneed's situation does for this team. I thought it was very key in a couple of different ways. But clearly, from the get-go, from the snap, everybody was keyed up on not just attacking, playing aggressive defense, but trying to take the ball away. Punch-outs after punch-out after punch-out. From not just Mike Hughes, who I think we all agree had probably his best game in quite a while, not just in Kansas City, but Jaron Reed making an impact, Tyron being there, Dan Sorensen making a couple of plays. Like, I thought this was a concerted effort on the defensive part to go get the ball away from them.
And that's nothing different than what, Steve Spagnuolo coaches this defense to do week in and week out. They're always trying to create turnovers. It's just something that those can be hit and miss. I mean, certainly earlier in the season, the Chiefs were doing the exact same things as trying to punch the ball away, and they weren't getting the turnovers. You're going to do that, and some weeks you might create one or two. In a game like this, maybe this is a little bit of regression to the mean earlier in the season when they were really underperforming in the turnovers, and you get a game like today where it just seems like they're knocking one loose every possession. But I also think that, some of that I think is momentum. It is a little bit of the defense getting confident and feeling like they can be a little bit more freer and going for those turnovers. And the Chiefs players we talked to, with Mike Hughes and Tyrann Mathieu after the game, they even mentioned about the fact that, they felt like the Raiders were being a little bit loose with the ball, and it was just the opportunity for them to go after it and make some plays. So it's not something, it's something the Chiefs do every single week. They try to punch the ball out and do all the time. I think it's just whether it was luck or, like I said, regression to the mean, that they managed to get a bunch of them in a hurry this week.
Well, and I think when they get their tablets and get a chance to look at the All-22, they're going to come away with more opportunities. That's where I'm going to watch the All-22. But to watch the game, I got to do it on the television. To hit the highlights, I probably just put it on the phone. There's all these different places to get all this different content to make sure that you're up to speed on this sport and on this team. You can do that really easily and combine it with all of your other entertainment if you go over to DirecTV Stream. It combines everything all into one particular platform. You don't need a separate remote. You don't have to look for remotes. You don't need a new device ever again. It makes it really easy to take out the clutter and take out the confusion. You can find it all over on DirecTV Stream and get more information about it on DirecTV.com. That's DirecTV.com. Compatible device is required, and content does vary by package. Packages are something we talked a lot about previous to this ball game, and particularly what the other side did in Gus Bradley. He went away from his normal scheme. He learned his lesson from this week. It didn't help him any. They played too high quite a bit. They played double Robert quite a bit, and they still weren't able to slow down. What was the difference, Matt, in what the offense was able to do this time versus Raiders versus the last meeting?
I think there's a couple of things, but most specifically, it's that you got to get pressure on the quarterback. And a couple of those times, they did get some pressure on Mahomes and made some plays, but it's the ones where they didn't that absolutely came back to bite them. The Chiefs had not had a 44-yard play or longer going back to, I think it was October 17th. That's almost 2 months since the Chiefs in passing game had connected on a big play like that until Mahomes and Hardman picked up that big one. And that was on a little bit of a broken play. It wasn't how originally as designed. Originally, it was supposed to be, as Mahomes told us after the game, Hardman with a hard stop and then going back on deep. He kind of did the stop, but the cornerback fell down. And then he just took off running and waved his hand. And so it was a little bit of broken play. But between that, later on the big hit to Tyreek Hill, you give Mahomes time and he escapes and he buys a little bit more time. It doesn't matter what coverage you play. Eventually, Mahomes will beat that. And the fact that they let Mahomes kind of break out of the pocket and extend some plays and be able to push the ball downfield, that's more vintage Mahomes that we haven't seen lately. Sometimes you're going to get lucky. Like I said, cornerback's going to fall down. But I think the big part of it was just that even though the Raiders at times got some pressure on Mahomes, they just could not do it consistently. And they just got beat on a couple of big ones. But I think also, the Chiefs didn't make any mistakes. They weren't dropping passes. They weren't committing, any back-breaking penalties for the most part. They had a few miscues here and there, but for the most part, I mean, this was an A-plus game. I mean, there just weren't any mistakes. And it doesn't matter what defense you play. If the Chiefs play error-free football, they're going to do exactly what they did today.
Yeah, and I'm glad you point that out. They did make a couple of mistakes. They did have a couple of penalties. It did keep them from a little bit more points probably, but at the same time, I'm not worried about the offense in the second half. They obviously took care of business in the first half. In the second half, it's more of we're just trying to get through the rest of the game and not get injuries. So I don't really care how the second half looked when it came to drives. But I think the important thing that we need to point out is Mahomes went 20 of 24. So he threw 83% was his completion percentage for 258 yards. That's a phenomenal game for a QB, and he looked very efficient. He looked like he was hitting his wide receivers. And most importantly to me, they kept trying to get Josh Gordon involved, and he finally got a touchdown. He got another catch on top of that, and they tried to go back to him a third time. Unfortunately, it wasn't caught, but they got another wide receiver involved. And if he gets going in this offense, and they have Byron Pringle, they have Demarcus Robinson, they have all those different guys that can play roles, McCole Hardman at times like he did today, they're going to be in a much better position going forward, and this offense is going to be very hard to stop.
Yeah, if someone, whether it is Gordon, whether it's Pringle, whether it's Hardman, even if it's going to be somebody on a different person on a week-to-week basis, you've got to just have somebody else who can step up and provide some relief for Hill and Kelsey. Those guys are great, but there's only so much they can do if they're going to be getting double teams all week, every week. So one of the other guys has to come up. You've got to get a guy that can give them some relief. And if Gordon can be that guy, then yeah, I mean, I think the sky's the limit from where this offense can go. It's just, you've got to have somebody else that can draw some attention. And Gordon's been getting a lot of, praise from the coaches for, the little things that he does that don't show up in the box score. And you can see that. I mean, he plays physical football. He likes to block. He's not afraid of that. I mean, he'll stick his nose in there. So he does those little things. But you're right. I mean, as far as opening up the passing game, the biggest thing that they need is really just another target that can get some attention and make the defense, at least, pay a little courtesy to somebody else and not just Hill and Kelsey.
Well, and Kelsey is getting hammered at the line multiple times and getting hammered on routes, and it doesn't seem to be getting called. So they're letting them play when it comes to the tight ends. And I think what you look at is the running backs are getting involved in the passing game. Darrell Williams with another long touchdown. I think that was a great play design on that, and getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire involved as well as Derek Gore late in the game.
Well, the Chiefs owned this game in the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. And that was a big part of this. I mean, the offensive line absolutely plowed some holes. There was plenty of running lanes for those guys today. There was a couple of passes, yes, that the guys got out and were blocking for them. The only really mistake, I think, from the offensive line, I think maybe, Andrew Wiley got a little bit sideways on a play, gave up a sack. Orlando Brown gets the penalty for – I didn't think he deserved a penalty for being an ineligible player downfield, but those are going to happen. But other than that, I mean, I think this offensive line played extremely well today, and in the ground game particularly.
Yeah, and now this running back by committee seems to be stepping forward. A total of 8 targets for 50-plus yards for the running backs, and like you said, 3.7 for Clyde Edwards. That's fine. Grinding it out enough carries. I think they ended up non-Patrick Mahomes carries and non-Chad Henne kneel downs. You still got a good 22, 23 carries for the ground game that I think that balance really paid off here as well. Now, maybe that's a focus of the game flow and what was already the score, but is this something they can stay going forward?
Yeah, I think they can, because, I mean, it was, to me, a little bit of a tale of two halves as far as the run game goes. I thought they ran it very effectively in the first half, and Derek Gore's, huge touchdown run, the 51-yard touchdown run, kind of skews the stats a little bit. But at the same time, I thought they ran the ball very effectively in the first half, and in the second half, outside of Gore, I mean, the Raiders knew they were going to run the football. They just wanted to run the clock out and get out of there and have some extended drives. And the Raiders still weren't stopping them. I mean, they were able to make those 2 long drives. They ended with field goals, but the Chiefs were fine with that. I mean, they weren't really trying to push the ball into the end zone at that point. They were just trying to run the clock out and get out of here without any additional injuries or exerting themselves too much. They got a game Thursday night, so it was more about managing for that than in the second half than it was really trying to put up yardage or points. So I think the Chiefs got exactly what they wanted. I think that those are sustainable. I mean, it's been a trend increasing through the season that they've been leaning more and more on those running backs in the passing game. I think that's a big part of trying to open up what defenses have been playing against them. I think you got to continue to do that. The run game, I think, has continued to be effective. I think you saw it again today. I mean, I think that you're seeing more combination blocks, things as this offensive line starts to play better together. And it's not just about winning one-on-one matchups, but really about, scheme blocking as a group. I think you're seeing that start to come along. We've been talking about that. So I do think it's sustainable. I think it's something they can continue to build on.
This game upped the Chiefs' chances here, looking at the postseason. Critical game coming on Thursday. We're going to tie those in here in just a second, but this holiday season, you need to go grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And even better, Built Bar is full of all the goodness, the rich, decadent flavor that you want, and they're actually covered in chocolate, at the same time as being low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, as well as fat, and high in the protein that everybody needs for their fitness. You can get both of the best of the both worlds, delicious and healthy, with Built Bar. There's many, many flavors. They're always coming out with new ones. I can't even keep up. I think eggnog came out this last week. And they give you the extra fuel that you need to get through not just your day, but through the holiday season itself. That becomes a slog this time of year. So be prepared for that. People are passionate about their favorite flavor. Find out what yours is. You can always leave them for Santa as well. I'm sure he would appreciate that. All you got to do is go to Built.com and use our promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your next order. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And while you're doing that, you might as well put a little thought on the line as to what you might want to put your money down on your sports betting. If you want to do that, get to BetOnline.ag. It has all of your season covered as we hit the props for the end of the year and move over into the playoffs. This is going to be a lot of fun, and there's a lot of betting left to do. It remains your best spot for all of your sports action, basketball, football, everything, and you can get a 50% welcome bonus if you go sign up and use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive yours. BetOnline, the fastest, easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports, and that is where the game starts. Where this game finishes,
I just want to say really quick, we do need to talk about the playoff scenarios, but one thing that really stood out to me in this game that we haven't mentioned, Mahomes really looked like he has really changed what he's been doing when he's moving behind the line of scrimmage. I saw his eyes downfield so much more than I have seen it in previous games. And I'm not saying he got away from it, but he was looking to try to deliver the ball downfield. He was looking to try to make plays downfield and not run. And I think if he can continue to do that at the right times and just buy time in the pocket or buy time around, I think that's going to be huge for this offense going forward.
Yeah, I don't think the Raiders, outside of, like I said, a few plays that they did get some pressure on him and hitting for some sacks, I don't think for the most part the Raiders did a very good job of keeping pressure on him. I mean, Mahomes had some room to escape and he had some room to run. And when he's able to get outside the pocket on broken plays, that's always going to be in his favor. Mm-hmm. So, I thought those plays were absolutely big. And I mean, that's what Mahomes does. Now, the question is going to be, will teams continue to struggle getting pressure on him? That's where the offensive line's going to step up, and I think they are improving.
Well, I'll say this on Patrick's part himself. I think there were a couple of really nice throws today. A lot of big chunk plays. Maybe not, the 75 yards for touchdowns, but the ones that moved the ball really well and put the pressure on the defense. But I think maybe the best throw that Patrick had today was the throw he didn't make. This showed to me that he's able to control himself and not push. Does he need to be up 25 points plus at the time to make sure he doesn't push too hard? I don't know. But I thought that was at least another minor step forward in playing controlled ball that doesn't give your opponent an opportunity.
The only thing I would say about Mahomes' game today is that there's probably a couple of times when you get a 25-point lead that you can slide and just take the yardage you got and not try and take a hit for a couple of extra yards.
Agreed on that.
It's a little too competitive at times.
All right, Ryan, you wanted to talk about the playoff scenarios. Let's go ahead and go in there. Let's go ahead and dive in.
At this point, as we're recording, we have the Chargers leading the Giants, so that makes Thursday even more important. But they are still behind the Chiefs. What the Chiefs were able to do with the loss by the Ravens today, your Chiefs have climbed into third place in this playoff seeding. And again, we've talked about this before, but all you need is a loss from the other two division leaders right now, and for the Chiefs to hold par. It feels like that's coming. I feel like the New England Patriots in particular are a bit overinflated little bit of a paper tiger right now in terms of being able to keep up with some of this stretch, and particularly get to the playoffs, Matt. How do you feel about today's effort, what it means for the stretch run and trying to get that number 1 seed?
Well, the biggest thing that the Chiefs have to do, to get the number 1 seed or move up, you continue moving up in the seeding, is win. Because they lose all the tiebreakers to everyone. So they need to continue to just be able to get some ground between them and everybody else. So Buffalo losing is good. I mean, the Baltimore loss today was huge for the Chiefs because that now puts them ahead of Baltimore. So winning out gives you what you need there. Then what you have to get is you have to get a loss from New England and one from Tennessee. That I think is going to be a little bit tougher, especially because Tennessee just continues to amaze me with, what they've been able to put together without Derrick Henry. And now the prospect that they may be getting him back sooner than later. And really, maybe the 49ers and Steelers will offer them some challenges. But here's the team that the Chiefs have to root for. It's the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins play both the Titans and the Patriots in the final 2 weeks of the season. And if we go into week 18 and the Chiefs went out and the Patriots went out, we're going to be having the Chiefs and the Patriots playing at the same time for the number 1 seed. So maybe Kevin Harlan's going to get to do a little dual broadcast again. And maybe the Dolphins will get some more barbecue from Andy Reid by sending him to the number 1 seed. Because Chiefs fans right now, you are a huge Miami Dolphins fan the rest of the season.
Fins up, people. Fins up.
I was there at that game when that happened. That was just nuts.
That was a crazy day. We could be heading towards it again. But you're right. I mean, the Thursday game against the Chargers is key. I mean, I truly believe that if the Chiefs beat the Chargers Thursday night, they're going to run the table. I don't think there's any doubt to me in my mind. That's the toughest game on their schedule. The Bengals and the Steelers have shown that they've got a little fight in them, but they're both enigmatic. But going on the road on Thursday in the NFL against a playoff caliber team is about the toughest thing that you can do in this league. So that to me is it. You beat the Chargers, there is no reason why this team can't finish 13-4. And if that's the case, then root for the Dolphins, fins up all you need.
Yeah, and it's awesome because Kansas City was able to rest some starters in the second half. They were able to take the foot off the gas in the second half and rest some guys and just run the ball and not try to get the ball downfield and have to pass and risk injury to other players. So that was good for them. Buffalo's getting trounced right now by the Buccaneers, so that's going to help Kansas City because they would lose that tiebreaker. The Patriots play the Colts next week. That's going to be an interesting game in my mind. I think that's a potential hiccup for them, but it's possible that they win out. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes. I really am excited to see how this playoff scenario shakes out over the next several weeks. Matt, we got to get to it, though. Who gets your game ball from tonight or from today?
I have to go for the low-hanging fruit once again because the player of this game is Mike Hughes. I mean, coming out of nowhere. This was a guy who 24 hours ago probably wasn't going to be playing that much. I mean, he was going to be maybe in a reserve role. There was still the possibility that Rashad Fenton was going to play, but with the Chiefs having La'Jarius Sneed going back to be with his family, and just an absolutely terrible situation, it really changed the two players. Tyrann Mathieu's role in this game really changed dramatically. He eventually took over for La'Jarius Sneed in the slot and played extremely well. But Mike Hughes starting on the outside played an incredible game, forces 2 fumbles, gets another one into the end zone. I think he led the team in tackles too. The guy was everywhere. On Sunday. Best game, not only as a Chief, probably the best game of his NFL career. And if that's the sign of what you're getting from Mike Hughes, a former first-round pick, that could be huge for this team down the stretch. If Mike Hughes plays like he does right now, and he is still a backup reserve and only the number 4 corner on this team, my goodness, this team's going to be stacked in the secondary for the stretch run.
Yeah, I'm completely.
Thank you, Minnesota, for that trade. And thank you, Pittsburgh, for Melvin Ingram. Just want to throw that out there. Ryan, who's yours going to?
I'm glad that you bring up Melvin Ingram. I'm not going to give it to him 2 weeks in a row, but I do want to say that the front four, everybody got at least half a sack today. I think that's key. That shows you the maturation of them as a unit. I thought a couple of those twists and some of those little games they were playing up front, particularly with Chris Jones and Melvin, were really effective. That's huge. But I've been waiting to do this. We've all been waiting for this for a year. And beyond sacks, 4 hits of the quarterback. And Derek Carr is probably the poster boy for what happens when you hit quarterback in terms of his performance. My game ball goes to Frank Clark for showing up and showing out and getting those hits. I think that turned the tide, and he's a little bit back. I won't say he's all the way back, but he's getting there.
And I'm glad you mentioned Melvin Ingram, because Tershawn Wharton absolutely owes him a Big Mac, because that sack that he got was all because Melvin Ingram absolutely stole what Brandon Parker stole and drove that young man into Derek Carr's lap and made it possible for Tershawn Wharton. So Big Mac and fries, he definitely owes Melvin Ingram.
And I still can't understand why Pittsburgh let him go for anything. But, thank you, Pittsburgh, for that. We appreciate that. My game ball is going to go to Tyrann Mathieu. I thought he played a fantastic game. He played fantastic, like you said, at the nickel spot. I apologize. Interception, fumble, recovery. He just was everywhere doing what he does. And I'm excited that he wasn't hurt. I thought he got hurt during the interception return, but he popped right back up and didn't seem to miss any time. So my game ball is going to Tyrann Mathieu. I think in a way I almost want to give one to La'Jarius Sneed, because I think he is the reason that this team was as focused as they were. And I hate saying that, but that's the reality of it. This whole team was emotional. And I have to give props to Patrick Mahomes, because the story came out. He was the one that gave Sneed the plane to go down and see his family. And obviously that's, just a great gesture. So good game by the entire offense for the most part. I know Travis Kelce is frustrated, but offensively, this offense looked a lot better than it has been in weeks.
Well, and Tyrann Mathieu spent most of the game, really playing in that slot role that La'Jarius Sneed usually does. And, and I asked him how was the process of him going about, finding out he's going to be playing that role, whether it's he volunteered for it or the coaches. He told me he got a text at 5 a.m. Saturday morning from one of the coaches telling him that the game plan was changing. He was going to be, playing that Sneed role in the slot. And that's tough to do for anybody. When you've prepared an entire week at practice to play one role, and then on a Saturday, you're told that you're going to be playing something entirely different. That's why Tyrann Mathieu is who he is. I mean, he's a great player, and he absolutely deserves a game ball for that alone.
Well, and I said this on RGR, and I want your feedback real quick, Matt. I think it's very telling about the progression of La'Jarius Sneed himself. That the fact that when he has to miss a ball game, the only thing that you can do with your roster is replace him with an all-pro. That says where he is in this hierarchy.
I mean, it was a pretty obvious solution. I mean, in retrospect, I think there was a lot of angst in the last 24 hours about how you do replace La'Jarius Sneed and what he does. But that is the only way. I mean, it truly is. I mean, taking a guy like Tyrann Mathieu and putting him in the slot, there's no other option, especially, with Rashad Fenton banged up. I mean, that wasn't truly a consideration. And the Chiefs did use him a little bit in some dime situations. But, in that spot, absolutely. I mean, Tyrann Mathieu is your best solution. And the fact that he is willing and able to make that kind of transition, I mean, it speaks volumes to him. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it tells you a lot about just La'Jarius Sneed, that if he goes down, who do you replace him with? Yeah, you got to replace him with the Honey Badger.
And I have to ask you really quick, since it's a short week, I hate putting you on the spot. Do you think Lucas Niang is back and starting on Thursday, or do you think they give him another week and he is seeing spot duty? Kind of the same issue with Fenton. And do you think Sneed is back for Thursday?
Yeah, there was a little bit of conjecture about Fenton that, the Chiefs might want to hold him back a little bit today, that might lead to him being able to then play a starting role on Thursday. I think it's a lot more likely that that's exactly what you're going to see. I mean, we'll find out for sure, but I would think that he would be absolutely able to go from playing basically a dime role that he played on today versus being able to play more of a nickel standard role. Could be he start on the outside, absolutely, but I don't think the Chiefs would have any worries about rolling with Mike Hughes again too. But that means that Fenton can be at least the number 3 corner and play a little bit more inside, where he is pretty comfortable if he's healthy enough for that. Yeah. For Sneed, I think there's a really good chance that he'd be back, but that's pure speculation at this point. It's just going to depend where he and his family are. And if he's not back, the Chiefs would not have any concerns, because they just want that young guy to do what he has to do to take care of his family and take care of himself.
No, and I understand that completely. I just was curious your thoughts. And what about Niang? Sorry.
Niang is a good question. I mean, he certainly seems like the fact that he was active and he got some snaps today is a really good sign. At this point, I think it's coach's decision. I mean, the Chiefs have got 3 guys that they're pretty comfortable with at that right tackle spot. Remmers is out right now, so now it's Wiley and Niang. I think the Chiefs have shown that even if Niang's healthy, they've been pleased with what Wiley has given to them. So I'd expect them to keep it a little bit close to the vest. You want the Chargers to worry about any position that they can. So if Niang's going to come back, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't know until right before game time Thursday.
Folks, tomorrow we'll have updates for you on the Sneed situation, all the fallout, and if we're going to get any clue about those particular ones, Matt and I will talk again for Wednesday. Make sure that you check that. Matt, thanks for taking the time tonight.
Thanks, guys. Take care, everybody.
Everyone have a great week. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you.